In 1903, the ancient city of Kano, once the beating heart of the Sokoto Caliphate and one of the greatest centers of trade, culture, and Islamic learning in West Africa, stood on the edge of history. Behind its towering clay walls, generations of rulers had defended the Hausa people's independence, faith, and prosperity. But as the British Empire advanced with modern firepower and relentless ambition, Kano became the stage of a dramatic clash between tradition and colonial conquest. What followed was not just the fall of a city, but the collapse of a centuries-old empire and the dawn of a new colonial order that would reshape Nigeria forever. The year was 1903. At the heart of northern Nigeria stood Kano, a thriving city, a fortress of commerce, culture, and Islamic learning. For centuries, Kano had been one of the brightest jewels of the Sokoto Caliphate, commanding influence across the Sahel and the Sahara. Its walled city, with gates that had withstood centuries of warfare, was a symbol of strength and resistance. But in the dawn of the 20th century, this historic stronghold would fall to the advancing British Empire. Kano was more than just a city. It was an empire within an empire. Founded as far back as the 10th century, it grew into a powerful Hausa city-state before becoming one of the key emirates of the Sokoto Caliphate after the jihad of Usman Dan Fodio in the early 1800s. Its location made it the beating heart of trans-Saharan trade. Salt, cola nuts, gold, and slaves passed through its markets, and its dye pits produced the famous Kano cloth, exported far beyond Africa. By the 19th century, Kano was a bustling metropolis of over 70,000 people, one of the largest cities in the region. But across West Africa, the balance of power was shifting. The British, having already claimed Lagos and much of southern Nigeria, turned their eyes northward. They sought to bring the Sokoto Caliphate, the largest political entity in West Africa, under their control. The British did not see Kano as just another city. They saw it as a gateway. Whoever controlled Kano controlled northern Nigeria. The path to Kano's fall was paved with years of tension. The Royal Niger Company had been steadily pushing against Hausa states, undermining local authority and disrupting trade routes. Treaties and agreements were forced upon rulers, while British troops gathered strength. By the early 1900s, Frederick Lugard, the High Commissioner of Northern Nigeria, had made up his mind. The Sokoto Caliphate would be broken, and its emirates brought under British rule. Kano's emir at the time, Aliyu Baba, was a determined leader. He had inherited not just a throne, but the duty to defend his people and their faith against foreign conquest. Rumors of British campaigns in neighboring territories reached Kano, and preparations for defense began. The city's great walls, massive fortifications of clay and stone stretching over 20 kilometers, were manned, and warriors stood ready. Yet, the British possessed something the defenders could not match: modern weaponry. In early February 1903, the British launched their advance on Kano. Colonel Morland, leading a column of nearly 800 soldiers, mostly Hausa and Yoruba conscripts under British officers, marched north from Zaria. Their arsenal included Maxim guns, the dreaded automatic weapon that had already changed the course of warfare across Africa. The march was brutal. The Harmattan winds whipped across the savannah as the soldiers trudged through villages, taking supplies and silencing resistance. By the time they neared Kano, they were battle-hardened and ready for a decisive strike. Inside the city, tension grew. Emir Aliyu Baba was away with many of his cavalry forces, attending to matters in Sokoto. This absence would prove costly. Kano's defenders, though brave, were fewer in number than usual. Still, they would not surrender without a fight. On February 3, 1903, the British arrived at the gates of Kano. What followed was a clash of worlds. Kano's horsemen, armed with swords and spears, charged fearlessly, their brightly adorned robes fluttering as they rode against British rifles and machine guns. The battle was fierce, but the outcome was inevitable. The defenders fell in great numbers, as the Maxim guns tore through cavalry lines. The once proud cavalry of Kano, which had dominated the region for generations, was cut down in hours. By February 5th, the British breached the city walls. Smoke rose as fighting spilled into the streets. Markets that had thrived for centuries turned into battlegrounds. House by house, street by street, the defenders resisted, but the firepower of the British proved overwhelming. After days of resistance, Kano fell. The city was looted. Its treasures, from manuscripts to artifacts, were seized or destroyed. The once mighty walls that had withstood so many wars could not protect it from modern empire. When the dust settled, Kano, the beating heart of the Caliphate's commerce and culture, lay in British hands. The emir, Aliyu Baba, fled, but was eventually captured and deposed. In his place, the British installed a new emir, Muhammadu Abbas, one more willing to accept colonial authority. It was a pattern the British repeated across the north. Remove those who resisted, empower those who cooperated. The fall of Kano sent shockwaves across the Sokoto Caliphate. Just weeks later, the British marched on Sokoto itself, and by March 1903, the Caliphate's political power was broken. The great Islamic state that had stretched from modern-day Niger to northern Cameroon was no more. In its place, the British stitched together their new colony, northern Nigeria. Yet, even in defeat, Kano's legacy endured. Its culture, religion, and traditions survived colonial conquest. The dye pits still ran blue. The markets reopened. The Friday mosque still called the faithful to prayer. But the sovereignty of Kano, the independence that had defined it for centuries, was gone. The fall of Kano was not just the story of a battle. It was the story of an empire's end and of the rise of a new order under British rule. It marked the end of one of Africa's greatest Islamic states and the beginning of a colonial era that would reshape Nigeria forever. History remembers the courage of those who fought to defend their homeland, even in the face of impossible odds. The walls of Kano may have fallen in 1903, but the spirit of resistance, the pride of its people, and the memory of its defiance live on.